This is the Historical Museum of the D.R. Barker Library at 7 Day Street in Fredonia, New York. Today is November 20th, 2001. Would you please tell us your name?
Albert Lawson.
And your birth date?
February 23, 1924.
And your current address?
29 Park Avenue, Faulkner, New York, 14733.
And the war in which you served?
World War II.
And the branch of service and your highest rank?
No, I was Army Infantry and I was just a corporal.
This video is being made by Michael Derby Quadrado of 5417 East Main Street, Brockton, New York. So would you like to share your story with us?
Sure.
Okay, love to hear it.
Want me to read all of this? Holy smoke. I was drafted in the Army Infantry, Headquarters Company, 3rd Battalion, 105th Infantry Regiment, 27th Infantry Division on August 1943, the summer of my high school graduation from Casadega Valley Central School. While I was in school, the school doctor, Dr. Sparrow, said that I had a heart murmur and couldn't play sports, but the Army took me in right away. I took 6 months basic training in Fort Benning, Georgia, and also in Louisiana. While in basic training, discrimination against blacks was present. Early on, the blacks were separated from whites, but later on, the Army wised up and didn't differentiate. I can remember one bus driver who made a black soldier go to the rear of the bus it was riding on. While in basic training, we had some sports such as basketball and boxing. I boxed a little. I became friends with many men, and after the war, when I married and had children, I named one of my sons Jody, after a friend of mine. Jody was a popular southern name at that time. I was an expert marksman on rifle range. I received medals for pistol, carbine, and M1 rifle. And then I got advanced training here. In 1944, I was shipped by train to California. From there, on May 18, 1944, I went overseas by ship to the New Hebrides Islands, a group of islands in the Southwest Pacific, west of the Fiji Islands. I arrived June 5, 1944. Next, I went to New Caledonia, an island 800 miles west of Australia and owned by the French, for training in island fighting, and I had the chance to sort of volunteer in as a scout and reconnaissance unit, ASCP, consisting of 6 men. I was a scout in my headquarters platoon, which meant I went ahead to scope out territory and to estimate enemy positions and numbers. My good friend Charles Hess was a fellow scout. He is currently living in Maryland after the war. My wife and children and I visited him and his family at their home a couple of times. We still write each other. Other men in the ASCP were Junior Harold from Ohio, who never got touched, and Bob Strouch, who was later killed in Okinawa. After the war, Bob's parents kept in touch with me for a while. The other 4 men, including myself, were later wounded in combat in Okinawa and in the Pacific War Theater here. It says, I saw my first ground combat in 1945 after we traveled by ship 1 week to the Pacific War Theater. The ships run by a Coast Guard were designed for supplies but were made into passenger carriers. Eating meals on the ship was a challenge, as you had to sit at a bar at a table that slid on the deck, so as the waves rolled, your eggs also rolled, and you had to grab them. The ship had a sleeping deck below, and the upper deck was for eating meals, and it's where the kitchen and headquarters were. We stopped at the Marianas Island, including Guam and Saipan. From there we went to Iwo Jima, and finally Okinawa. We were on Okinawa and had taken over half of the island when Japan surrendered. While I was still in Okinawa, just before Japan surrendered, when we were preparing to invade Japan, I remember a couple of funny incidents involving my friend from Maryland who had the same name as the German spy, Charles Rudolph Hess. Hess was in my company and we were look-alikes. Two or three times I was mistaken for him, and I was woke up at 4:30 a.m. for KP kitchen police duty. About 6:30 or 7, Hess came by grinning and informed me that he was supposed to be working. I don't recall him ever getting called to work in my place, however. I also remember in 1944 or 45 when Bob Hope and Francis Langford entertained our troops in Okinawa. We sat on a side hill to watch their show. At one point, Hope had everyone light a lighter or a match at his signal. It looked like thousands of Christmas lights. I saw Bob Hope and Francis Langford later in camp and shook hands with each one of them. I saw most ground combat when I arrived at Okinawa. The U.S. Marines had come through Okinawa so fast on their way to occupy Japan that they left some Japanese soldiers behind. On April 30, 1945, I was out looking for them. A Japanese soldier saw me and he shot one mortar shell at me. When these shells hit the ground, they exploded into pieces. The shell hit the ground, exploded, and the shrapnel hit my right upper arm. After the injury, I flew to Guam, where I stayed 1 month. I had stitches for 2 holes because the shrapnel went in from the left, traveled across my bicep, and exited out the right side. After my hospital discharge, I flew back to Saipan and then to Okinawa to resume fighting. I remained at Okinawa until the 2 nuclear bombs were dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki in the fall of '45. After Japan surrendered, the U.S. occupied Japan to take prisoners of any Japanese soldier that refused to surrender. I was in the cities of Osaka, Fukushima, and Sendai for about 2 and 3 weeks in each city. Because the war was over, I came into Japan by a B-29 bomber, which had 4 motors. If the war had still been going on, I would have had to use landing ships, where you have to walk in the ocean water to get to the land. Had the war not been over, many more lives would have been lost because the Japanese heavily guarded their borders along the ocean. I remember one plane that was heading for Atsugi Airport with our occupation troops, and it had to return to Okinawa due to another crash at the airport. The fellows had been asleep and did not know that the plane had returned. They said, "This looks just like where we left." Either I or someone else who had stayed awake replied, "This is where we left." I returned to the U.S. soil of February 3, 1946. On February 10, 1946, at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, I was honorably discharged from the Army on points earned and time in. Since I had been hurt, I received a Purple Heart and points toward discharge. I left earlier than some. I began as a private, then I was a private first class. I ended up a corporal based on points earned and time in. In addition to the Purple Heart, I received an Asiatic Pacific Theater Ribbon with 1 Bronze Star, a Good Conduct Medal, Victory Medal World War II, and Bronze Arrowhead Medal. After the service, I went home to Lucille in Charlotte Center to my home with my Aunt Doris and Uncle Alec Kibbe. I went to work in a radiator plant called Blackstone Corporation, where I worked for 41 years. In December 1949, I married an Irish woman, Valley Gorley, from Sugar Grove, Pennsylvania. She was a student nurse at WCA. When we met, we lived on the Gary Ellington Road for 49 and a half years, where we ran a tree farm and raised livestock, including chickens, beef, cattle, and horses. We had 5 wonderful children, 9 living grandchildren, and 1 deceased grandchild, and 2 great-grandchildren. I have been acting in our American Legion for 56 years. Presently, I'm a member of Henry Mosier Post 38 in Faulkner, where I would serve as chaplain and a member of the Color Guard. I've been a member of the Ellington United Methodist Church for over 40 years. I've always been a sports fan. After the war, I played men's softball and later coached many baseball and softball teams for my children. Currently, I follow local high school and college sports closely, attending as many events as possible. That's it.
Thank you. Would you like to tell us, or would you like to show us some of the things that you brought in?
Well, I think these are a couple Japanese telephone outfits. The innards are out of it, but there's instructions on how it used to work. I guess this is another telephone thing here too. I think the other part is home with some of my tools in it. And I guess this is a Japanese belt buckle one the soldiers had. And this is one of the 10 yen currency. I don't know what this is, but it's a little coin, Japanese. Guess that's about it, except the Japanese flag I got a hold of. I think that's a battalion flag with all the members of the battalion names on there. But there's a lot of names on there.
The flag was taken to a Japanese translator, and she explained to us that many individuals in the Japanese military carried flags. The flags had characters along the border where they radiated from the central red disc. In many cases, there were prayers or the names of the soldier's family and friends. Japanese soldiers carried these 18 by 24 inch silk flags near to their hearts. This flag came from Fukushima. It was one personal soldier's flag. The flag has the soldier's name and his address. It has his brother's name and his mother and father's name, and it has the names of relatives or the neighborhood. And after each name, there are prayers written. The translator explained to us that this is a flag, very official in Japan. They used a stamp on the flag to show that it's a formal contract, and what it is a celebration into entrance into the army for the soldier. She believed the soldier was probably very young, especially because there were so many prayers said over him. The top of the flag in Japanese translates to "Long life, this nation, brave, pray." And there are strong symbols on the flag having to do with liberty. A symbol for kamikaze, which means God wins. And I
would like to state that the flag is turned sideways, and if you were to look at it, turn it turn it clockwise, it would be with the larger writing that is now on the left, if that was on top, that would be the correct way to display the flag. Would you like to tell us about the photo you're holding? How old are you? Do you remember?
77.
No, in the photo.
Oh,
Was that when you first enlisted, or was that when you left the service? Do you remember?
I don't remember for sure.
So he was probably
20, so about a year afterwards.
Yeah.
Can you get a good focus on?
Yeah, hold it up. Okay.
Did you think he was handsome in his uniform?
20. Very.
Is there anything that you would like to add that maybe wasn't added, either one of you?
Is there anything we forgot, Dad?
Hmm?
Was there anything we forgot about your military service? Anything you want to that you can remember about being
I don't think
in the
so.
islands or in Japan?
How did you feel about it?
Well,
Or how do you feel about it now?
it was a good experience. It was sort of scary at first, but after everybody realized the war was over, there was a lot of friendly Japanese. I had a couple ladies doing my laundry for me even.
How'd they do their laundry?
Oh, they had, probably by hand with the tubs and that one. I don't think they had many machines.
Is there anything that you would like to say to the youth of America about?
Well, I think the service is a good thing to look into because a lot of soldiers and sailors and Marines get killed if you don't be on guard for it, especially in September 11th.
Well, thank you very much.